Two other men, both criminals or bandits, were also led out with him to be executed. And when they came to the place called Golgotha, the skull, they crucified him there, along with the other two, one on his right and the other on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood there watching, and the rulers even sneered at him, and they said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews." This particular scene is full of irony in so many different ways. He's being mocked as if he were a faux Messiah or a phony king, when in fact, he's the real king who can offer them forgiveness for their crimes against him. Now think about this. He's asking his heavenly Father to forgive those who executed him. The soldiers who cast lots for his clothes, the soldiers who mocked him along with the rulers there. In fact, it's an omnibus forgiveness for all those involved in his demise, including the rulers, including the high priests, including those who are watching. The irony becomes especially thick when they say, "He saved others. Why could he not save himself?" They don't realize that it is by his very death that people will be saved. Now, you need to understand that Jews didn't believe in sacrificing human beings. When they offered sacrifices, it was animals. It could be lambs, it could be birds, it could be pigeons, but not human beings. They didn't see the death of a human being as somehow an atoning sacrifice. And nothing in the Old Testament suggests that a human being sacrificing themselves is an atonement for sin. So this would have been a new idea. If we study the Maccabees, which is from a slightly earlier period, they in fact say that if they accept martyrdom, they may atone for some of the sins of their people. But that's a martyrdom, that's not an execution. It's not an execution by your own people who should have appreciated you. It's not an execution by the Sanhedrin using the Romans as the ones who will do the execution in a way that, in fact, would repudiate what they're actually trying to say. Now, if you look at this story carefully, Jesus is in control of the scene. Not only do we have "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing," but later he simply says, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." From start to finish in this scene, while those who are standing around him think they've got him under control, it's actually Jesus who is controlling this scene and determining its outcome and deciding when he will expire and go to be with his Father. So the scene is just packed with irony. It says one thing, but it really means another. It suggests one way of how they were going to get rid of this problem with this problematic Galilean. But in fact, instead, they enabled him to save the world through his death on the cross. And so when you look at this whole passage, it's poignant. I mean, think about somebody executed for committing a crime that he's not really guilty of. Was he the King of the Jews? Well, yes, but as he says in the Gospel of John, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were of this world, my disciples would fight." But this is not the way this kingdom comes into the world. There's an interesting story that I can relate to this that really will bring this home. One of my friends, a Methodist bishop from South Africa, was Peter Story. And he and Desmond Tutu at one point during the war between the Afrikaans and the black people of South Africa were taken out into the woods by the Afrikaans soldiers to be executed because they were supporting the black tribes and wanted them liberated from the laws of apartheid. And as they were about to be shot in the woods, Peter's story said to these two young men, teenagers who were going to kill them, "Are you Christians?" And they said, "Yes, we are." And then Peter said, "Then you can't do this, because even if you hate me, you must forgive me." This story is about the thing that breaks the cycle of violence: forgiveness. It's forgiveness that breaks the cycle of violence. It's forgiveness that comes with the atonement for sins for the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. For he did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but rather to forgive it. And Jesus even did that on the cross.